Reality is produced by human imagination, the place where everything already exists. How does that land with you? Too mystical or uncomfortably accurate? If you're skeptical, try this thought. Good. A little doubt makes the experiment cleaner for you. If it's true, you don't need to create from scratch. You need to claim what already exists within you, to take the thing you want inwardly, as though it were already yours, and let the world mirror it back. Think about it. Before a house exists, someone sees it in the mind's eye. Before an achievement arrives, someone feels it as real. First it happens within, then it shows up without. In this video, we won't get lost in heavy theory. We'll watch this principle at work step by step, using the same kinds of examples Neville Goddard used, so anyone can test it for themselves. Your life, he said, is simply the outer display of your inner imaginal activity. What you hold in consciousness, with enough conviction, hardens into experience. So stay with me. By the end, you'll spot what you've been imagining on autopilot, and how to start imagining in your favor from today. Because the change begins in consciousness. In the final year of Robert Frost's life, Life magazine interviewed him, and he left this line behind. Our founding fathers did not believe in the future. They believed it within themselves. To Neville Goddard, that sentence described almost perfectly how any reality is born. In his view, the order is always the same. First, you believe it inwardly, and only then do you see it outwardly. After breaking away from England, those founders could have set up their own royalty, crowned one of their own, and carried on a dynasty. They could have chosen a dictatorship too. Instead, they agreed to imagine a form of government that had not been tested since the days of the Greeks. Democracy, Neville would say, is the most difficult form of government in the world. And yet, those men decided to hold it first within. They trusted it could happen because they understood the power of belief, the same power Neville wanted you to recognize as your own. That is why repeating, "I am going to be rich," does not produce riches. What works is accepting wealth inwardly and declaring, right now, "I am rich." You must believe in the present tense, because the creative, active power is God within you. God is your awareness, and God does not will be or used to be. God simply is. His eternal name is I am, so he cannot say, "I will be rich," or "I was rich," but rather, "I am rich." Claim what you desire from the here and now. Even if reason and the senses argue back, if you assume it with feeling, if you sustain and repeat that inner act, it will objectify in the outer world, which is nothing more than imagination made visible. Trying to change circumstances before changing imagination, Neville warned, is laboring in vain. He learned this through experience. He once had a friend who hated Roosevelt and wanted to change him. Every morning, while shaving, that friend would scold Roosevelt. He took real satisfaction in the routine, yet he could not understand why Roosevelt stayed the same. Neville's conclusion was simple. If you want someone to change your imaginal activity, because it is the only cause of your life, and you can believe anything within you if you refuse to bow to what the senses dictate. Nothing is impossible to imagine. An imagination, persisted in and believed, creates its own reality. For Neville Goddard, everything begins with one central idea. All things exist in God. God exists in you, and you exist in him. He insisted that your eternal body is human imagination, and that this imagination is God himself. In other words, imagination functions like a body that contains everything. And when you imagine, the imagined thing emerges from that divine body. That is why Neville said the story of Jesus is a magnificent mystery, one you cannot truly grasp until, through experience, you discover that he is your own wonderful human imagination. Neville also pointed to what we are told, that God speaks to man in a dream and reveals himself in a vision. A vision, he explained, is like a waking dream, in the very place where you are, whereas a dream happens when you are not fully awake. Years ago, Neville described a particular vision. He was carried in spirit to one of the earliest mansions on New York's Fifth Avenue at the turn of the century. As he entered, he saw 3 generations gathered, and he heard the eldest man sharing his grandfather's secret with the others. According to the old man's words, the grandfather would stand on an empty plot and say, "I remember when this was an empty plot." Then he would describe aloud what he wanted to build there, seeing it vividly in the mind's eye as he spoke. And in time, it became established. He moved through life in that way, bringing into objective fact what he had first claimed subjectively. From that scene, Neville drew a direct conclusion. Everything in your outer world was first appropriated inwardly, no matter what it is. A desire can be that empty plot where you find yourself, remembering when what you have today was only a desire. If someone says, "I remember when I gave a lecture at the Women's Club of Los Angeles," they are implying they are no longer there and are now where they want to be. In the same way, remembering when you were poor lifts you out of poverty and places you in comfort. Remembering when you were ill moves you into health. Remembering when you were unknown implies you are now known. And by changing the memory image of someone, you can remember when that person, now with fame and fortune, was unknown and had no money. Neville said that was the grandfather's secret of success. He concluded that this was precisely what he learned in the vision, and he urged you not to set it aside, because it came in that way for you, right here. In chapter 12 of the book of Numbers, it is said that God speaks to man through dreams and makes himself known through vision. For Neville Goddard, if God reveals himself that way, speaking while you sleep, what could be more valuable than remembering your dreams and your visions? No morning newspaper and no book, however interesting, compares with the vision of the night, because there you receive instruction from the depth of your own being. And to Neville, that inner guidance is not merely symbolic, it is practical. It is meant to be applied in ordinary life if you take it seriously. He explained that the God within you also speaks in a dream, just as it happened to him when, in his experience, he was taken on a journey through time to that beautifully personalized mansion at the turn of the century. As spirit, he said, he was invisible to those present, yet he heard more clearly than they did, and understood their words more vividly than they did. He entered that atmosphere to learn the story, so he could share it with those willing to hear, believe, and then prove it for themselves. But Neville made one thing plain. Simply hearing his vision does not guarantee wealth. The decisive part is to apply what you've heard, and to remember when. If someone were to say, "I remember when I couldn't afford the luxury of spending $400 a month on rent," they would be implying they can afford it now. And if they added, "I remember when it was a strain to live on my monthly wage," they would be confessing they have already gone beyond that limitation. You can place yourself in any state by remembering when. You can even remember when your friend expressed a desire to marry. By remembering when she was single, you are persuading yourself, convincing yourself, that she is no longer in that state, because you have moved her from one state to another. When Neville said that all things exist in human imagination, he meant infinite states of consciousness. Everything you could possibly experience today exists within you as a state, and you are the operative power of that state. Only you can give a state life. You must enter it and animate it, so it expresses itself in your world. Then you may fall asleep again, believing the objective fact is more real than the subjective state you entered. But, Neville insisted, all states exist in imagination. When a state is entered subjectively, it becomes objective in your vegetative world, with its ups and downs, and it's fading away, yet its eternal form remains, and it can be reawakened and brought back to life through the seed of contemplative thought. So, Neville concluded, the most creative thing in you is to enter a state and believe it is real. For Neville Goddard, causation is the assembling of mental states. Once that inner assembly happens, it produces whatever it implies. This is not about forcing outcomes, but about choosing the state you live from and letting life catch up quietly, without strain. Picture this. You have two friends who would feel real empathy for you, not mere sympathy. Imagine they have just heard good news about you. Neville would bring them together in your mind and, without moving, listen in imagination as they talk about you and what has happened. Because they are true friends, you hear their joy and see it on their faces. Then you allow yourself to become visible. You feel the handshake, the embrace, and you accept their congratulations as a fact. In that moment, Neville said, you have assembled a state. When that state occurs, it creates what it implies. Therefore, you are the cause. You go on with your day, trusting the imaginal act will become fact. Later, you may wonder how it happened, and remembering the inner act, you would say, I did it. And if you did it, Neville would ask, did not God do it? Yes, because God and you are the one I am. Will you keep believing there is another power outside you? Or will you accept the confession of faith he urged you to embrace? It is the Shema. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. If the Lord is one, he cannot be two. So if his name is I am, and you say I am, you must be one with the Lord who brought the world into being. Neville would point to these words. By faith we understand that the world was created by the word of God, so that what is seen was made from things not visible. Here, he said, the word of God is imaginal activity which, joined with faith, creates the world. And faith is the subjective appropriation of an objective hope. Bring it into daily life. When you tell someone your desire, they cannot see the imaginal act they may be doing about you. If you say you need a job and they accept it, then whenever they think of you, they remember your need. But if they change your words and hear you say you love your job, they can remember when you needed one. Because now their memory holds the fact that you have work you enjoy. And when you meet again, you will tell them you have it, bringing confirmation of their creative act. If imagination works like this and proves itself in rehearsal again and again, what does it matter what the world thinks? It costs nothing to try, and the change can be decisive. Try it, Neville would say, because you will demonstrate it in execution. This may clash with what you think God is. Perhaps you still need God out there, so there are two, you and God, instead of one. Neville would say that is fine, but he would insist. God did not become you, so there would be God and you. God became you so you might become God. And if God became you, his name must be in you. And it is. For if you are asked a question, you must first be aware of the question before you can answer. That awareness, Neville said, is God. You may not know who you are, where you are, or what you are, but you know you exist. If you stay conscious only of what your senses and reason dictate, you may believe you are limited, unwanted, ignored, mistreated, and your world will echo that belief. If you do not realize your own consciousness is causing it, you will blame everyone but yourself. Yet Neville repeated it. The only cause of the phenomena of life is imaginal activity. There is no other cause. If you accept the horrors of the world exactly as the newspapers and television present them, Neville Goddard said, that very belief keeps those horrors running on. When people buy into talk of shortage, they end up purchasing what they do not need, obeying the pressure to sustain an imaginal activity that leaves them frightened. And notice what follows. Your shopping, your conversations, even your sleep begin to revolve around that fear, as though the headline were a command. Neville's point is blunt. Attention is agreement. Shift it, and the pattern loosens quickly. Throughout Scripture you are told, do not let your heart be troubled. Do not worry. Do not be afraid. Neville argued that if fear could be removed, there would be no need for psychologists or psychiatrists. He even called much of it nonsense, because this branch of medicine changes its theories daily and quarrels endlessly about what a person's attitude to life should be. Then Neville would say plainly, the vast world is in human imagination right now, and from it you can bring forth any desire by believing it already exists. First, be clear about what you want. Then make an image in imagination that fulfills it. Would your friends know? Would they talk about it? Hear them with you now, speaking of your wish as accomplished. Perhaps you are at a cocktail, or seated at a dinner held in your honor. Or perhaps it is a small meeting over tea. Build a simple scene in the mind's eye, and accept its reality within. That invisible state, Neville insisted, produces the objective state you want, because all objective reality is produced by imagination. Look around you. The clothes you wear were imagined first. The chair you sit on, the room that surrounds you, nothing here was not first imagined. So you can see, he repeated, that imagination creates reality, and if you refuse that, you are lost in confusion. For Neville, there is no fiction. What seems fiction today can be fact tomorrow. A book written now as a novel comes out of the writer's imagination and may become a fact in the days ahead. With a strong memory or a good research method, you can trace today's facts. Not every fact is recorded, because not every thought is written down, yet everyone imagines. A man who feels unjustly imprisoned and longs for revenge can stir the world, because by divine law, all things mingle with all beings. You cannot stop the force that comes from someone imagining, because behind the mask they wear, you and he are one. Begin now to notice what you are thinking, because as you think, so you imagine. Only then can you steer truly towards a defined aim. If you lose sight of that aim, you can be moved, and will be moved, by apparent others. But if you keep your mind centered, conscious of staying focused on your goal, you cannot fail. The end of your journey is where your journey begins. When you tell Neville what you want, do not try to give him the means or the method, because neither you nor he knows them. Tell only what you want, so he may hear you say you have it. If you start explaining how it will happen, he must first erase that picture before replacing it with what you want to be. People insist on talking about their problems. They seem to enjoy repeating them, and cannot believe that all they need is to state their desire clearly today. If you truly accept that imagination creates reality, Neville Goddard said, you will stop indulging your problems. You will notice that worrying is not neutral. It keeps the very state you dislike alive within you right now. And the moment you notice it, you can choose differently today. That is why, he argued, the most important thing you can do is to believe a thing into existence, just as the founding fathers did. They had no working example of democracy. It appeared in Greece centuries ago, yet it collapsed because the Greeks changed their imaginal activity. We could do the same. Do not assume for a second that a democracy must continue. We could be under a dictatorship within 24 hours, because anything is possible. If you value democracy, you must stay watchful and keep its ideas alive within you. It is the hardest form of government. Here a man may speak his mind and organize a protest. Under other systems, he could not. If you want the freedom of democracy, you must sustain it in consciousness. Now, Neville said, if you hold to this law, you do not need to broadcast what you want. You simply assume you have it, even if reason and the outer senses deny it. If you persist in the assumption, your desire becomes your reality. There is no limit to the power of belief, and all things are possible to the one who believes. Imagine what an enormous power that is. You need not be pleasant, good, or wise. Anything becomes possible when you accept what you are imagining as true. That, he said, is the road to success. Neville maintained that anyone who succeeded in life lived as though already successful. Living in that state, he could name the people who helped him, and he might deny he was always conscious of success. Yet his consciousness compelled the help he received. To believe your desire exists, Neville repeated, is to exercise the marvelous creative power you are. In the first psalm we are told, "Blessed is the man who delights in the law of the Lord. In all he does, he prospers." This law, as explained in the Sermon on the Mount, is psychological. You have heard it said, "You shall not commit adultery." But I say to you, whoever desires a woman has already committed adultery with her in his heart. It is not enough to restrain the impulse outwardly. The act is committed the moment the desire is entertained. Knowing what you want, move towards it, because the act was done in the wanting. And now faith must be added, for without faith it is impossible to please God. Can you imagine a state and feel that your imaginal act is already a fact? Right now for you. Neville Goddard began there. Imagining costs you nothing. You are imagining every moment, though not always consciously. Yet if you use that creative power and assume a wish is already fulfilled, then when you obtain it, the circumstances will look so natural that you may deny imagination had anything to do with it. For Neville, that is how people fall asleep again. He noticed that most of us do not recognize our own harvest when it stands in front of us. And if we remember we once imagined it, reason insists it would have occurred regardless. Your mind will remind you that you met a man by chance at a party, and he happened to be interested in making money. He heard your idea, sent you to his friend, and look what followed. So it is easy to ignore the law. Yet the words remain. Blessed is the man who delights in the law of the Lord. In all he does, he prospers. Neville insisted, do not forget the law while you live in Caesar's world. Apply it wisely, but remember you are not justified by using it. Justification comes through faith. You must have faith in the story, that God promised to manifest as you, as your very self. This is God's promise to all, and everyone is asked to believe it. It is not what you are, Neville said, but what you entrust God to do that saves you. And to the extent that you trust God to save you, you are saved. We have been given a psychological law to soften the blows of life. The law is simple. As you sow, so shall you reap. It is the law that like begets like. As you imagine, so your life will be. Knowing what you want, assume the feeling that would be yours. Were you all ready to have it? Persist in that feeling, and in a way you do not know and could not devise, your desire will become a fact. In the vision Neville described, the grandfather made his fortune by standing on an empty plot and saying to himself, I remember when this was an empty plot. Then he would speak a verbal picture of the building he wished to see established there. Neville called it a marvelous technique. You can remember when you were ill, when you were unknown, poor, or a failure. To remember when you were implies you are no longer that, and the power is in the implication. Use the law, Neville concluded, and it will lead you from success to success, according to what you conceive success to be. Yet for him, success is fulfilling the promise, And you cannot do that through the law. The promise is fulfilled through faith. Are you remaining faithful? Examine yourself to see if you are. He told an eternal story. Believe it, but do not change it. The story is this: God became you, so that you may become God. Use the law to cushion the blows while God keeps his promise. And then, one day, when your journey is finished, you will say, "Into your hands I commit my spirit. You have redeemed me, O Lord, faithful God." This is the cry on the cross. Commit your spirit to your imaginal act, relax, and fall asleep knowing your redemption is assured. Then, when you least expect it, God will show you that you have been redeemed by awakening in you, as you, and you will be born, not of blood, nor of the will of the flesh, nor of the will of man, but of God. Now, as Neville asked at the close of his lectures, let us enter the silence. And that concludes our video. If you enjoyed the content as much as we did, don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss a single episode. Leave a comment below. We'd love to hear your feedback and suggestions for future videos. And don't forget to turn on notifications to stay up to date with all our updates. Thanks for being part of our community. See you in the next video.